Yeah, I guess like for one, like weather-wise, everything's kind of done dying, but it's not really winter yet, so it's not like you necessarily get like very nice fields like filled with snow. It's mostly just like
Just
dying everywhere.
gray and
Yeah.
bleak.
And then at the same time, like we've like created this whole culture around this time to like make up for it, where everyone's supposed to like be very happy and be with their families. And I guess most of the time, like you're not actually that happy during Christmas
Mhm.
time, and you mostly pretend that you're happy. And I guess that that's what gets to a lot of people, that like they start thinking that what other people pretend that they are is what they actually are, and they feel like they can't, you know.
And I got a lot of this through the binary of the surface of the water versus her submerging herself in it. Like on the surface, you can kind of imagine this water being still once she gets under it and screams, but um, I picture herself like submerging herself. She's like actually trying to submerge what's going on in her mind when she's in a sense. It almost seemed like she might actually be an alcoholic.
Well, yeah, it was like just very like her suffering's like very internal, and like surely like she has like a lot of issues that might need a psychologist or two to resolve, but like it's mostly how like her family doesn't really know that those things exist, and like her submerging herself in the water and screaming there, like no one can hear that.
Mhm.
um and it's like like it's just all her inner world, like she's submerged in her own pain and her own problems, and like she tells her mom that she's okay, and her mom walks away because like she has no reason why not to believe that she's okay.
Right. So, yeah, I thought that was a really fascinating usage because we've seen this like time and time again. Someone's like just submerging themselves in a bathtub in a movie, but I think this really explains the contrast between the surface and what's immediately underneath the surface. So I think this is a really beautiful way of expressing it.
Well, thank you.
And there was another line in here. Every conversation, every glance, every gesture, and every action should be scrutinized until our heads can no longer comprehend their literal meaning. It reminds me a lot of this short story that Vladimir Nabokov wrote back in 1948 called Symbols and Signs. Um, they have a son who's actually in a mental institution
Mm.
because he can't like process these things. He overprocesses these
Right.
things. Um, like even the shape of a cloud is enough to make him think that people are out to get him. Everything's a grand conspiracy against him. Do you see a little bit of that in this Amelia character?
I could see a little bit of that, yeah. Like, again, like, it's not that having a boyfriend who cheated on her is not a big deal, but it's kind of like, um, I guess that, like, when you don't know enough about the world and you're just starting to, like, learn what, like, losing and, like, all these things feel like, you feel like it really is the end of the world, and, like, everything, no matter how simple, like, it could just potentially mean, like, like, you're gonna end up dead in a ditch for some reason.
Yeah, there is. I definitely get that. She seems to just, even if she's just putting on an illusion of suicide, it's still like very troubling that she's so adamant about it.
Yeah.
Well, not about suicide itself, but just sort of. I don't want to say this is harming herself because she's not intending to, but there still is a very real possibility she could drown. Like, even if it's.
I mean, I just, like, I feel like she would want to tell her friends that she's suicidal, just to like, I don't know, to like add to her whole
To create that
thing.
ruckus you talk about,
Yeah,
how she's like creating a ruckus just to resolve it, so show that she can have control over the situation.
basically. Although having the ruckus in the first place kind of means that she doesn't have control over the situation, but it's one of those things that teenagers need to resolve.
Oh man, yeah, it's really well written. Are there any? Is there anything about the process of writing this you want to tell us about? Any?
Sure.
Um,
Um, Originally, like before I wrote this, I was having a lot of issues. Like I was taking like narrative studies classes and stuff like that, and at first, like you get so much like information about how to write something that then you start questioning if you write it like that at all. Um, and I guess what I mostly had issues with was that we were talking about how like characters are supposed to sound, like even through like narration, and I had like a very hard time. Like let's say if I was writing about a 5-year-old boy, like if you read a story about a 5-year-old boy, the vocabulary you use to like describe things is not the vocabulary of a 5-year-old boy, but
Absolutely.
somehow it sounds like it's a 5-year-old boy that's talking.
Hmm.
And I guess like I had issues there because I felt like if I was writing something, like it was too formal for the character that I was talking about. And then like I talked to Professor Benson, he kind of told me like, how about you just like start something, like use your full range of vocabulary, but just try to make it sound like the character, just like the character's feelings. And that's how this story started, and that's how it ended. I don't know.
And there are a few ways that you can picture her very vividly as a teenage girl. Like she sort of jumps to the conclusion, "Oh, my mom's only taking care of me because
Yeah.
she has to." I think that's something that pretty much every teenager goes through. But you also have this really nice way of putting this. You like say, and then she set every fact and figure around her aflame with a simple question mark. So you definitely see a little bit of how she's aspiring to be like an intellectual as well.
Yeah.
So it's a very original voice.
I'm glad that it worked out in the end because I wasn't very sure when I started writing it.
Um, so there was another thing that interested me: the potential, her very brief and it's not so explicitly put. She's just like thinking, and she's like, "My mom's having an affair." Like,
Yeah.
um, is this actually a possibility, or do we even need to consider this?
That the mother's actually having an affair?
Yeah.
I wouldn't think she is. Like, again, just part of like, I guess it's like she's like, oh, like this, like it's not even that dramatic because it's so overused, like to say that your mom doesn't love you or something like that. So
She's just trying to put a different answer to it because.
yeah, it's like no, it has to, my life has to be more dramatic than that.
So, where do you think this sense of like drama comes from? Why do people feel like they need to have a dramatic life?
Usually because they feel like they don't get enough attention.
Okay, so even though she's like denying the attention by just like dismissing her mom, like no, I'm okay, and the mom leaves. That's secretly what she's craving, all beneath
Yeah,
the surface.
it's like this past week I was reading this. It's like a short novel called The South, and it was like for my Spanish class, and there's like a scene where the girl like she feels like her dad has forgotten about her, so she hides in the house
Mm-hmm.
for like a really long time, waiting to see if like her dad's gonna come looking for her, and the only person who's searching for her is her mom, and she's like very upset in the end when they find her that she knows that her dad wasn't looking for her. And I guess like it's also kind of like that. Like she says she's okay, but she wants her mom to see past the surface and like ask her if she's really okay, like come in or something. And she feels like I don't know, like that's her way. Like she can't go up to her mom and be like, I'm not okay. She wants her mom to know that she's not
So there's like a sense of detective work in this. People
okay.
want to be read in a way.
I suppose, but don't we all like want to be read without saying, like when people ask you like how you're doing, you say you're fine, but you're not fine, and you kind of wish that someone would ask you more than that, but you don't
That's true.
necessarily tell anyone.
Yeah, that is true. Um, hmm. What else? There was one word choice that I
Oh
really
boy.
liked. You said she refused to let the rest of the lecture go to waste because her inability to confection proper introductions. Like, here she's hyping herself up, like, very literally sugarcoating such a dark,
Literally.
like, a very dark sort of thing she just tells herself. And she's telling herself to, like, sort of lose her mind for a little bit.
Yeah.
But what do you think the. Why did you want her to, like, sugarcoat it?
Because, like, I guess that she doesn't really know, like, the seriousness of what she's saying. Like, she knows, like, the theatrical use of it, but I don't, like, you know how, like, sometimes you make, like, a really big deal about, like, how your life sucks or something, and then you see someone else's life and, like, their life, like, actually sucks, and you're like, oh, like, I should be more, like, grateful.
Hmm.
I guess it's kind of like that. Like, she's saying all these things, but she doesn't really know what it feels like to be, like, a person that would actually want to commit suicide.
That's true. So you see her as like adapting someone else's drama to try to explain her own
Yeah.
feelings of like isolation and